7 p.m. I'm going to call this special meeting of the Stanislaus Consolidated Fire Protection District Board of Directors to order at 7 o'clock. I would invite you to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome again. I will now do the roll call. Let the record reflect that all directors are present. Our board clerk, Chris Higginbotham, is present. Our chief, Michael Wisnowski, is present. And our counsel, Chris Diaz, is present by teleconference. Mr. Diaz, are you with us?
Yes, good evening, everybody.
In the interest of saving money, we've invited Chris to teleconference in rather than making the drive to be here. So, but let the record reflect that he is here by teleconference. Approval of the agenda. As this is a special meeting, we have only one action item on the agenda. So it's safe to assume that since we're all here for that item, that it will move forward as indicated. Is that correct, staff? Yes. Great. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved. For a second?
Second.
All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Public comment period. This is the item on the agenda where members of the public, according to California law, are allowed to and invited and welcome to come and address the board, specifically on matters that are not listed on the agenda. Everything that is on the agenda, we will give you the opportunity to speak and be heard by the board. But if you'd like to address the board on an item not on the agenda, I will invite you to come forward. Keep in mind, however, that California law precludes the board from taking any action on an item that is not listed on the agenda. That being said, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come before the board and speak under the public comment period? Anyone? Anyone at all? Hearing none, I will note that no one wished to address the board under the public comment period. I will then move into the action item that is on our special meeting agenda. It is consideration of adoption of resolution 2018-04, which would order the levy and collection of charges within the Stanislaus Consolidated Fire Protection District Special Benefit Assessment Rate for fiscal year 2018-2019. And coincident with this, there will be a discussion and provision of direction potentially by adoption of a resolution which would discuss potential implications to the preliminary budget, and that was adopted according to legal statute at our June meeting. So there would, depending on what action takes place on the assessment, there could be potentially changes to our final budget. So I want to make that clear as we start this action item. Staff did provide us a pretty extensive package on this item indicating items that we had before us at the June meeting, but some additional materials as well. Have all board members received and read the items presented to us by staff? Yes. Yes. All members have. Staff, do you have any additional input to provide to the board beyond what is written in the staff report?
No, we don't. I believe the only thing that we do have is we received a phone call today, and I believe there was some concern from one of our contract agencies that this would affect them, and that is not the case. This is only for the original Stanislaus Consolidated area.
Which contract agency was it? Who was the call from, and what was the substance of the call, please? Could you please enter that into the record?
The caller, did you get the caller's name?
Just from the caller ID. The caller didn't identify himself. It was a member of the public calling to,
So it wasn't
it wasn't a contract.
calling
It
who
wasn't from
happens
the-
to live in that
okay.
contract area,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Which,
calling to
It was
confirm
from
the
Oakdale-
meeting.
Oakdale Fire District.
okay,
Mhm.
so,
Okay, that's it. That's
so
it.
they wanted to just understand whether it was pertaining to
Yes,
our agency
exactly.
or, okay, thank you.
Other than that, no other comments.
Is there anyone, are there initial board questions before I open this up for public comment?
I have a couple. On page 7 at the bottom, I'm assuming the red line, was that meaning to have without instead of with? Ending balance of the special benefit with any approved increase?
I'm certain it must be without.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. The
I
blue-
assume so, but.
Yeah, the red one, the blue line is the beginning balance of the
Sure.
assessment, and then yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And then my other question, well, one of them. The statement, the concluding statement in your report, Chief, on page 9 says this action would unfortunately result in any assessment changes being delayed until fiscal year 1920.
Is your microphone on? Because I know that I heard comments last meeting that people in the audience could not hear us.
The button says on. Can you hear me okay?
I don't hear anything
Okay.
coming out of it.
Okay, so my
Yeah.
question is on page 9. The last statement says this action would unfortunately result in any assessment changes being delayed until fiscal year 1920.
I believe that if tonight, if we don't meet the timeline, that's what that was referring to, that it would be pushed to subsequent year, tax year. So if for some reason it did not pass tonight, or it was passed and we were not able to make the timeline getting into the county, then it would be collected the next year after that, so it would delay it a little bit.
Okay, so tonight falls within.
Yes,
Right.
tonight does. We've contacted, we've had numerous phone calls back and forth with Wildan as well as CalCAD, and they would do their best to make sure if it is approved tonight, that they would do their best to get it on the tax roll for this year and meet the guidelines.
Those last couple of sentences just kind of sound as though it kind of doesn't matter what happens tonight because there would be a delay regardless. At least that's how I take it.
Okay.
Well,
No, that was not the intent, sorry about
Okay.
that.
Additional questions?
Not being in attendance at the meeting where there were 3 board members, I guess I was a little confused as to, it sounded on page 8 at the bottom, it references that there weren't enough, I'm sorry, let's see, could not occur due to lack of votes. So that question I think is for my fellow board members. Did the item die? Did we just not adopt a resolution for 0? Because I understand the vote happened for no increase in assessment. Were we just lacking the resolution?
I'm happy to answer that question.
Thank you.
Board would like. So under health and safety code provisions of the Fire Protection District Law of California, every action in the board requires 3 affirmative votes. And so at that meeting, we had 3 members in attendance. But the motion was made to actually leave, and board members that were present can correct me if I'm incorrect. I believe the motion was made to increase the assessment to 3%. 2 voted in favor of that, 1 voted against. And so 2 to 1 vote is essentially a no vote under Fire Protection District Law. So we did that, so there's 3 affirmative votes in favor. And so it's not having enough members there to kind of get the 3 votes. Essentially the motion is done.
Actually, counsel, not to correct you, but there was no motion. A motion was made, but there was no second in either direction.
Thank you.
Correct, you recall that? There was- Yes, and so there was
I think it was
yeah.
becoming very clear.
Correct, and so there was no motion that was going to be made that could be made in either direction because there would be no second.
Thank you for clarifying.
But there was an affirmative and passing motion on the preliminary budget, option A, and that's why in it, in my comments at the last meeting wherein I expressed my willingness to have it come back to us for future consideration tonight if the timeline can be worked out. I wanted it to be clearly within the record and on the agenda that there would potentially be implications to the adopted preliminary budget because it was moved and seconded and passed 3-0 with 2 absent to approve the preliminary budget option A without an assessment.
Thank you.
Any other questions by board members before I open it up to the public? Is there anyone that wishes to address the board on this matter? Welcome.
Me again, I read here. As I recall, there were 3 members present at that last meeting. And I read their issue whether or not they had to vote on it, or they had to have the whole board.
That is not correct. At the June meeting, you are correct, there were 3 members present.
And that was a quorum.
That it absolutely was a quorum, and we conducted a legal meeting that night. But what happened when we got to the resolution to potentially adopt the assessment increase, there was one board member that indicated that he'd be willing to make that motion. There was no board member that was willing to make a second. So therefore, that motion died for lack of a second. Then there was a potential consideration of the making of a motion to not approve the assessment. But that motion too did not have a second. And so neither one of those motions could move forward.
So then it was.
Correct. So then it became a failure to pass the assessment.
I don't understand why you didn't bring it back to a full board with a robust thing in order to get it passed.
It did not have to come back, but there was a request by staff that after the meeting, apparently they did research and found out that they had more time and that they wanted to bring it back to the board. So in July.
Even though they did it right the first time.
Well, their robust packet, you say there's a robust packet tonight, and I will say that they did the same robust packet preparation in June. And so I would say robust June, robust July, and robust now. So credit to our staff. But when it came back to us at the July meeting, when they asked the board if we would reconsider, board members had some questions about that. And you'll remember I weighed in and said, well, legally, yes, it can come back before the board, but in the interest of greatest transparency, I suggested and council agreed that it be brought back at another meeting so that it could be advertised as to specifically that it was going to be reconsideration of the assessment, and in doing that, that there would potentially be an implication to the adopted preliminary budget. I wanted, and I think all of the board members and council supported that. So that's why it's here again at a special meeting, so that everything that would be contained within that potential action was duly noticed and posted for the public, so that anyone that was interested in following along the board's action could be here to speak before the board tonight. So council, is that a fair characterization of what happened?
It is a fair characterization, and I would just add that the real impetus behind the item coming back was that the county was insistent that we actually adopt a resolution one way or the other. And because that could not happen in June due to a lack of 3 affirmatives, it did come back to you for formal adoption of a resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, as far as this alleged so-called quote special benefit assessment, it hasn't been a special benefit assessment in years. It was a Prop 218 assessment. It was supposed to be a special benefit to the property owners in the district. It no longer is because there's so many outside the district that are getting the exact same benefit without paying for it. Your contract, I believe you're talking about Oakdale and Oakdale Road. They're not paying for it, but they're getting the exact same benefit. They even have our trucks with our names on it, names on our station. They get the exact same benefit, but they don't pay for it. And you're coming up on your contract. I haven't seen anything from Temple Consolidated where they've actually done a study in depth yet what it's actually costing you guys to give them this free benefit that they're not paying for. And I'm talking about the property owner not paying assessment. It's
What?
not fair to us because we are subsidizing. And why do we subsidize them? Because the money comes from them. The money that comes from our assessment all goes in one checking account. This is not, our assessment is not restricted and never has been, even though year after year after year we go through this. You don't know what's coming out of our assessment, what's paying what. Yeah, you can say, well, it costs us more than that just as firefighters. Well, yeah, if you don't know what hours are going where, who's, our hours, their hours, if you're paying the paramedics out of the fire But since they're listed as paramedic, firefighter, paramedics, then you're paying them out of the assessment. You've got how many properties out there that are not paying the assessment, even out in the CAL FIRE, out in the county areas that are getting exemptions. I have that thick of properties that were exempted when I asked for their information before. I didn't go figure that many pages. I got pages and pages, then they're all exempt. Most of them because they overlap CAL FIRE, and since they try to pay the CAL FIRE tax, Council Consolidated gave them a deal. But they're still in the district, but so we have to subsidize them. It's getting very old, that we're only those that are in the district have to pay it, and we have to keep getting the increases on it. And you will not restrict it like you're supposed to. The ammunition plan, and that's solely on the board. You guys are responsible for that fiasco. They got waived over the $900,000 that they owed, and I believe the county said it was because of unpaid assessment, fire assessment for all those years. They got waived. Nobody, the other attorney, I've seen the letter. Nobody's done anything about it. Why? How? Who did it? Nobody knows anything. Nobody wants to talk about it. I suspect why they're not paying anything now either. Del Rey doesn't pay it. Storm doesn't pay it. They are back and forth with you guys. Somebody needs to take the bull by the horns and make them start paying what they owe. That's another one that we're subsidizing. But now you want to raise our assessments again.
Well, we're here tonight to consider not whether or not the assessment should be raised.
Right.
Saying you this, you that, you this, you that,
Well, what I'm
is
saying
is really contrary to how this process is supposed to
Not if you're
work.
raising, the reason you're raising it is subsidized.
No,
by the
we're
government.
considering whether or not it needs to be raised. That's really what the action item is. Does it need to be raised? And I just want to make it clear. Does it need to be raised? That's what we're here. We haven't voted.
As
We're
long as you are subsidizing these other properties, yeah, it will always have to be raised so you can subsidize them. It's not, doesn't have to be raised to provide the benefits of the people in the district. That's what you should be looking at, not how much it costs subsidizing the ones that are not in the district.
Well,
Whether or not are not paying.
we're
That's
here
what you should be
tonight.
looking at.
We're here tonight to take input about whether or not it should be raised, whether or not it needs to be raised. And I think it's fair. Is it fair to conclude from your testimony that you believe that the assessments that we're currently charging are subsidizing other entities, and that we're not properly accounting for them?
Yeah, I've raised this issue many times.
Right, and
nothing gets done about it.
well, with all due respect, I know that you approached me after the July meeting. I mean, after the July meeting was adjourned before we entered into closed session. You approached me that you had been asking these questions over and over and over again. So I immediately called over counsel because you alleged that we hadn't acted appropriately. And I explained that under California law, fire law, the action in June was an action. I also then brought over our chief. At that meeting, we stood right back there, and I asked him to specifically meet with you. And I believe you had a meeting
I
about
did.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I believe, unless I'm wrong, and we have quite a few staff members in attendance here, I believe our staff is bending over backwards to answer your questions.
They
You
are.
may not agree, and I don't disagree with your right to disagree, but it's not fair to come and say, you're this, you're that, you're this. We're here in this together. We're a part of a team. We really respect and value the input we receive from our constituents. But honestly, to be fair and candid, our staff met with you. Our chief met with you. He cleared his calendar to meet with you and answer your questions.
It's not the staff, and it's not the chief.
Well, so-
when I ask questions and they tell me they can't answer, it has to come from the board. It's the board that's not answering the question.
What question did you ask? Chief, what question did she ask you that you said that you could not answer?
The ammunition.
The ammunition. And I also stated to ask the board and council.
And council is on the line, and council, I specifically remember, since the time I've been on the board, most of the Army ammunition plant history, that ship had long since sailed. But when it came time that this board had to take action, we actually released a public statement because I remember strongly advocating that, because we felt very strongly that our constituents needed to know the reason why the liens were released. Was it this board's choice? Really? No. Were we happy that it happened? No. Were we happy that Riverbank and the Army didn't put their heads together to insist that the assessment fees were paid, or some other mechanism was put in place to ensure that businesses at the Army ammunitions plant paid its fair way so that our constituents didn't subsidize that? We felt very strongly that that was not equitable, and we made our opinion very clear. But you are not, in my mind, you can come to us over and over and over again, and I will politely listen, but there are other people that have the ability to make decisions to make some of that happen. And this board, on that issue, according to our counsel, and I believe we're getting sound legal advice, is not, we're not empowered to change that at the present time. And that's off topic. We didn't come here to discuss that. I'd like to bring it back to the assessment, but I feel that it's important to correct the record. You say our staff this or not, we're not properly accounting for it, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Some of that is just not true. You may not agree, but it's, it's not that we're not meeting with you, answering your questions, but fundamentally, it sounds like you don't agree. And that's
You're
okay.
making a point. Maybe that ship has sailed then, but why are you still not collecting it now?
Because
Why are you making no effort to collect it now?
who owns the property? The
LRA.
federal government.
The LRA.
The federal government.
The LRA signed the lease agreement with Amethyst. The LRA is still running it. The LRA is getting the money for it.
Who is the legal owner?
Yeah.
Who is the legal owner of the
It has
property?
been- I don't know, part of it's been transferred. part of it
Legal
hasn't.
owner is the federal government.
The federal government pays LRA to pay you.
Federal-
Maybe you guys need to straighten out who's supposed to pay you if they don't pay.
Council speaking, he's
I'm
trying
sorry.
to answer your question.
Which is indicating that federal property is exempt from local assessment.
Exactly.
Not on property of chief, it's not.
Then I would suggest you take it up with the city of Riverbank, because we not only issued a statement, well, you laugh, but they're the entity that's entering into leases with the
They're getting a
businesses
free
there.
ride. Why would they?
What?
They're getting a free ride, why would they take it up?
Well,
They're getting the money and they're not paying you, so why would they do anything about it? Because you guys are sitting back and saying, okay, we'll just let somebody else pay.
I don't think that's what we're saying at all, and quite to the contrary. We've written them letter after letter saying that we don't think it's appropriate
They should
that
pay
our
benefits.
constituents subsidize the businesses that we are not getting credit for. And, but while the federal government owns the property, we are advised that they are not subject to local assessments.
There's that letter, a public document, that you can get a copy of?
Council, have you not provided that, the press release,
No.
the information release?
We can find the public statement.
Yes.
Again.
President, I think we've exceeded our 3 minutes, so
Well, it's
could we, for comments, could we please move on with what we're here for?
I have another issue.
She has
Okay.
another issue, and
That's
I'd like to
fine.
hear her out. We're only 20 minutes into this meeting.
And an energy question, yes, I'm very definitely against this assessment rate. We just got our sewer water rate, the school's putting a fourth bond on our property tax, and you wanna raise the assessment. It's ridiculous. But my other question has to do with the, lifeline.
The what fund?
Lifeline.
Lifeline?
Oh, right.
Okay. There's a distinct page, it says page 30 on here, it's got a little thing on there, and it says HHS property guidelines. Is that the amount that you're going to use for the lifeline in 2018?
Staff?
No, it isn't. That's their guidelines. We are above the guidelines. Our program amounts are above these guidelines. And I did offer to send you a packet, but you declined.
Okay, because I was wondering when the board, the gen guys from the board decided to change it, because when this lifeline started, it started out based on, the county. We called the general, back in what, 2005, they used the Campbell County General Assistance Standard, multiplied it by 3, and then added for each person in there. When did the board decide to is that an agenda item, or did somebody just do it, or?
I don't think somebody just does it. Our staff, quite frankly, has been.
Okay, then I'd like to-
Our staff has been extremely conscientious in bringing items before the board and before public hearings. Why, can I talk? I didn't speak over the top of you. They've been very careful in bringing items before the board that the public would be interested in weighing in on it. And since I've been on the board and since I've been president, we've been very good in allowing people to speak because we care. You know, if we didn't care, we wouldn't be having this public meeting to take input. But I would ask staff to comment on the lifeline. I know, staff, this has been an issue that comes up every time the assessment does. Can you give just a couple of minutes, you know, sort of primer to us or summary on the lifeline? I know it was originally part of the original assessment, and the lifeline, you know, how those standards came to be and how they change over time.
I'll answer the best I can because it was prior to me and I don't have that history information, but they did an extensive research and set the guidelines at what they were. They've never been raised to my knowledge. We've always been above the guideline, and we've researched the guidelines several years since I've been here, and we've always been above the guidelines, so therefore we've not raised it. It's come to the chief's attention every time it's come up, and we have been above the guidelines.
When you say above the guidelines, can you explain what that means?
That's
please?
the federal poverty level of California, and we've looked at the federal guidelines, we've looked at the county guidelines.
So what do we follow? Do we follow the feds, the states, or the county, or some other?
We're following that's on page 30, we're following that. I don't know, I truly don't know how the calculation started, because I can't find that history.
Okay, but we're following the federal guidelines.
Yes.
And do you have any idea, just for category a one-person household, do you have any idea what the state would say that number is? Or what the county should say that number is? I just intuitively, I would think those numbers might be higher.
Let me look back at June.
I have to go back to 2005, the first one, and the annual, I broke in from them, it's $12,491. And it was.
For one person?
For one person.
So we're at 12,140 now. And you're
Okay,
saying
and
in
it was-
2005 it was 12,005? So we've gone down?
2008,
No,
yeah.
it's gone down.
No, we're not using these guidelines.
14,511. It's gone down a lot.
We're not using these, we're above that.
Okay,
We're at
what page?
14,000 something.
What page has the guidelines that we are following?
It's, the lifeline's not in here, I can go get one.
That's the problem.
Here's one. It's at $14,511.
Okay, so the federal guidelines in January of 2018, and I beg your indulgence for a couple of moments. The
Okay.
federal guidelines for a family of one was $12,140. Ours for a family of one is $14,511, correct?
That was in 2014, what is it now? There's nothing else in here to tell us what it is now.
This is now. What he gave me is right now.
But the 14,000 was based on the county, now you're basing this on the federal, that's why I want to know.
No, they're not. They're saying that they included this for reference, just for general comparison, because we've asked them at every meeting that this comes up, that every time, you know, people stand up and ask, we, mostly me, asks our staff, please give me more, please give us more detail, please help us answer these questions. And I almost fear in our effort to be overly helpful, maybe we're giving too much information, maybe it's confusing at this point.
Given the fact that you have to okay the lifeline at the same time you okay this assessment, if you okay it, you should have something in there about the lifeline besides this one little page.
It's on the district website, and I do offer it to send it out to everybody that inquires, and or all the ones that received it
Okay,
previous years.
that's a fair comment, and I appreciate that. And can we get that? Can we take a 5-minute recess and go get that? Can we pull that lifeline?
Is that not what you gave me?
This is, you
Yeah,
gave me
that's
the
it.
2018, but could I?
But to
could-
provide copies.
Could we provide
Absolutely.
copies?
Yes.
And could we also, do we possibly have, is this the same as 2017? Is it the same as 2016?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it the same as, when is the last time this changed? Does anyone know?
I do not.
It was
So
from-
it has been many,
Since
despite the.
2008, it's been the same.
Okay, so since 2008, even though the cost of living has risen, we've held the lifeline the same.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, well, we still, I would like to entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess so that we can go provide copies.
Just one second, though. There have been
I'm gonna-
cost of living raises since 2014, and you have not adjusted on them.
We're right, we've kept the lifeline the same.
But you have, you get that, I'm sorry.
So we've
If you look
kept
at
it-
this Lifeline resolution, which was based on the county, whenever there's a COLA, cost of living rate in the county, which comes from the state, then your thing is supposed to go up, be adjusted along with it, and you haven't been
So you
doing that.
want us to increase the lifeline?
Yeah, you need to look at the resolution that you passed to go with it. It says that you're supposed to adjust that when you adjust the assessment.
I,
So
okay,
you're
but I've
want-
heard
You're
you.
wanting it to go up, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
You now want it to go up because I thought I clearly heard you last year and the year before say to please keep these numbers low.
I said, if you raise the.
Assess-
Assessment, we should increase the lifeline amount.
If there is a cost of living raise, then your lifeline has to be adjusted.
So we need to increase it.
So we need to
That's what I'm
increase it.
saying.
Okay.
No, I'm
Oh.
not saying you should raise the assessment.
But you
I'm
say we
saying
should
you
increase the
raise
lifeline
out.
amount.
Not until you get this study, this thing that you're doing to find out where the money's going.
Well, I think we have a pretty clear idea of where the money's going, and I think our staff has done their very best to show you where the money is going. But can we,
Yes. And I
Have
would
it
also
just-
like to say one other thing.
Yes.
We haven't raised the lifeline in the last 4 years because the assessment hasn't been raised as well. So-
actually, the assessment was raised last year.
One time, yes, yeah, in the last 4 years, so. But I will go do that.
Okay, we'll adjourn for, we'll just take a brief recess until 7:40. Hi.
I live in Oakdale, and someone's come to this meeting, I don't wanna sit through the whole thing.
Which it's very entertaining. Come on now. I'm gonna be
It's about-
offended.
About 10 minutes or so, okay?
Yeah.
But, I live out by Woodward Lake, and I was wondering if the assessment is being raised there, or what's going on that?
No, because you're
Oakdale.
within Oakdale
This,
rural.
yeah, you live in Oakdale Rural's
You're in Oakdale
territory.
Rural,
This
yeah.
does not pertain.
It doesn't even have
No,
anything to
has
do with
nothing
it.
to.
Someone told me it did, so,
No.
fine.
Sorry.
Okay, no.
Our apologies.
Pleasant, safe drive.
Yeah.
Hope you have AC and that it's
Okay.
working.
Come on over here to me. Yeah. So are you going back, Susan? Is that what
No.
you- Oh, okay. I thought you turned around and headed back.
No, I already did that.
Oh.
I went up there Saturday, came back Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Went back up Tuesday, came back today. took our big empty deck on Saturday because there were thunderstorms.
Actually, he didn't tell me.
It's marble size tail. It was crazy. My friend posted pictures of it.
FYI. So if you have guys that are looking for a leg scooter, you'll have to pay for a hundred.
Well, I could have left you guys.
I saw that.
Without the
That's good. I can run
Maybe
out.
you'd be done by now.
In like an hour.
Just gotta be fair to the next
Yeah,
person.
it's like below me. What's that?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's one of those, I mean, it's 180 so.
I'm all for people sneaking.
That's how I got to this. I mean, I don't really want to do anything more, you know.
Trying to get past
What's
it.
that? Did you see the one I took a picture of, a video of it? That's why.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I won't have anything. Here you go.
Because I had people one-legged, so.
Yeah.
I was holding on. Heavy rope.
We're gonna head out.
I had people.
Napa. We're headed up there. We're going to, yeah, Florida, and we're in Napa for 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
My son and them are coming up from Southern Cal, and just getting ready for up there, so I had to trip.
Well, exactly. And
So,
the other day I just-
I thought we might need to eat up there, but I don't think so, because it feels like. We're gonna be, actually, we're going, Wilsburg, we're going there, and then we're actually going to the drags, we're going to the races. In Sonoma. Yeah. So we're gonna go over to that, but then they have all the stuff like, cruise around and do that. So, yeah, we plan to go, and we're gonna stay there for 3 days.
Yeah.
Again, I thought it'd be cooler, but we look like go the wrong direction.
That's a
We need to be close to the coast.
And then it comes back fast, so we'll see. But it's just so hot that it's just like. Yeah, trying to do something. Right behind the knee. Yeah. Exactly.
It's just hot. It's terrible to walk out in here. There's no relief.
Not up to the top.
Was that nice up there?
No, it's all
Clear.
Yes. Crystal clear.
I had a friend that was there, they just went up there today, and they got up there and called me, and stuff. You know, they're down
Not very good with
on
my
the lake, and
confidence.
it's
Not
nice.
very good with my.
Yeah, I was there yesterday.
Yeah.
Expand to the.
Yeah, I think it's more kind of the normal because I think
Yeah,
people
that's
that
part
work
of
in
it.
the city
Oh,
and
with
still
that
want to go
direction.
somewhere
Yeah.
and then that direction.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you
just-
already
Yeah, I
want
need
to
to do
take time
something.
off.
If nothing else,
Yeah.
just for.
Like they were saying.
Yeah, I think I go get a-
Sure, they're already here, they're scheduled trips,
Take off a shower.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know.
tours, you know, what do you do? You gotta take them somewhere. Reschedule them somewhere, try to find rooms for them.
So it'll be on that side of the other, it's not bad.
But if I don't, then
See something.
Exactly.
yeah, the other night, well, I actually did it 2 weeks ago. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up on like.
Just don't go on the volcano site.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, they can take up a collection and send you.
Should there be no problem
Hey,
with the
forget those,
firefighter side?
forget the stipends, just say, send money.
He said 6 weeks.
Dave's Big Island.
You're not, you're Oh,
Very much.
I had it on.
You understand?
Oh, it's still going, yeah, it's still doing its stuff. It's old news now, people are living with
Saying
it.
it's on the island.
Yeah.
Looks like a new
But it's
island.
like, here's this big design, and it's what, 1%?
Yeah.
It's not 1%, that is
Two.
grossly.
It's 2% of that.
So you just go to the other side.
Don't worry, when it does
That's what
quit,
people said.
just think what that property will be worth. No kid, though. It'll just, more,
3%.
more expensive is all it's doing.
Well, it's actually part of
Yeah, so I did break a shaft, I did break the side light off. I have no information, the other thing, they're supposed to set up. I've got more information from the
I didn't want to get in the middle, but you guys are going at it.
So, I have a copy of the lifeline.
Yeah.
We can share.
Yeah, we got
I'll
it.
just throw
Thank
several
you.
here, we'll pass them out.
Yeah.
And then
Steve and I can
copy
share.
of
There we
the
go.
guidelines.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Stanislaus County guidelines.
Thank you much
And
Lifeline.
for doing that. Thank you, staff.
current lifeline.
Thank you.
Hey,
Here's state and county guidelines, and this is California state guidelines.
State.
along with the other ones.
There we go. Set.
Here's covered California. You guys have covered California? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary.
Let the record reflect that we reconvened the meeting at 7:42, and our staff has passed out 3 different handouts. One is a Lifeline assessment application as it exists. One is California low income, covered California income limits, and the other one looks to be statewide limits. And a quick, but you took,
One negative for this
where's the
current?
one? Yeah, is it in here?
It's inside.
Yeah.
On the back of the
It's
front
folded on the inside.
Yeah, back of the page, sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, thanks. Okay, so right now, and as it has been for the last 4 or 5 years, am I fair characterization?
2008.
Yeah, since 2008, we've been at 14,511 for a family of 1. I'm just gonna go with that. Federal guidelines are 12,140. Stanislaus County would be, what's the comparable for a family of 1? 12,007?
Yes.
What is our, do we go by 30% limits or very low?
We go by the 30% limit.
Okay, so Stanislaus County's 12,750. So, and covered California, my gosh.
100%, we go by that.
So that's 12,060. Okay, so thinking about this, I think the conclusion I come to is that, and I wanna make sure I'm characterizing your testimony correctly. I know you're against any assessment increase, but you would like the lifeline every time the assessment increases, perhaps. You want the lifeline to increase because even if you're on a fixed income, your income does increase. So it would be most helpful to have a higher income because then more people would qualify for the lifeline. Is that correct?
Not exactly. The lifeline is supposed to be increased every time there's a cost of living increase. The state, the county, the lifeline is supposed to be adjusted. That's what they said in the beginning of this. But the idea was that the assessments get raised and they all go together. Now, if you're just gonna raise them every year no matter what because you wanna raise them, then it's gonna change all that.
Right, but I forget whether it was last time, or the time before, or maybe the time before that, we discussed this. We actually did look at those that provided to us, the documents from the beginning of time with this assessment. Not exactly the beginning of time, sorry, the beginning of time relative to the assessment. But staff in there.
1995.
Yeah, 1995, that beginning of time. We asked, because when you just need to know, when you say something, we take it seriously. So we asked our staff to get that to us, and I know they did give us those original inception documents. And I don't recall in there that there was documentation that said that there's some automatic lifeline increase. Is
No,
staff?
I didn't say that either. I said you're.
You said it should be, and I don't see, you said, you just said, when the original assessment was adopted, the Lifeline program was supposed to increase every time. Or maybe you say, or maybe what you're saying
saying
is,
it
I
should.
think it should.
The original, if you look at the original resolution, there's a section in there for the lifeline part that says that when you increase the assessment, you're supposed to bring that lifeline back as a separate issue and adjust that to go along with it. And usually there's a COLA, cost of living rate, that you use as your guideline, whatever you wanna call it, to raise it. When we first did this, almost every year you were raising the dang assessment, so the lifeline was adjusted to go along with raising the assessment. But then you stopped doing it, the assessment went up, and you didn't do anything with it. You started out over $12,000, now you're going downhill.
We're not going downhill from 12,000 to 14,000 is definitely an increase, not a decrease. It's not going downhill. Chris?
Thank you, members of the board. I was just going to suggest, because the lifeline funding needs to come from non-assessment funding, this could be an item that you could bring back and have staff look into it a little more. It doesn't prevent you from changing the amount that's in the lifeline if that's what Ms. Halbert is requesting, but that's something that could be looked at in future agenda items. Assuming that we can't get a clear answer tonight.
I understand that, Council, and I appreciate that, but I believe these questions are asked and answered, and asked and answered, and asked and answered. And maybe we forget it in between the 11 or 12 months that pass before it comes back to us. But I believe this question was asked last year or the previous. And we asked you to look at that. And I didn't believe there was anything in there that required the lifeline to change, but I believe it's understood that it could be increased if staff brings something forward, or if the board felt that it would and should be increased. I believe it's a valid point, and I believe the board can weigh in on it tonight as a part of the assessment.
I think you need to do it tonight, because you need to put it with your other paperwork in order for it to be effective this year when we have to pay our taxes.
Well, I think we could do it. I don't believe, unless staff tells me that it has to be increased, otherwise I'm sure they would have told me last year, or the year before that, or the year before that. But I believe we can, and so, that I think is, I'm going to go on and ask if there's anyone else that wants to speak before the board. But I think that'll be part of our discussion when I do close the public meeting portion. Is there anyone else? Did that conclude your comments? And do you think we have a fair understanding of your position? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to the board? Hearing no further comments, and certainly staff members, if you have questions or comments or things you want to clarify for the board, you're welcome to step up to the podium or speak from your seat. Hearing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board for deliberation. And before we just talk specifically, I'd like, to hear some deliberation about your position on the assessment. The proposed increase.
Well, I guess I'll start. I can start. I feel that we have increased it once, and I feel like we just keep putting a Band-Aid on it. I feel like with this, all we keep doing is not maybe so much addressing all the problems that we need to be addressing, and I think the board has worked tremendously on that. I think staff has, but I think we still have a lot of work that we need to do, and I think with, I can mention a few things. We're still concerned with the overtime, with the healthcare, the CalPERS. We just keep moving along, and we keep putting a Band-Aid on it. We're going to have to figure that out, to have to get a control on that. We're going to have to figure that out. Again, I've had calls. I wish more people would show up tonight and voice their opinion. I've had some calls, yes, please don't raise the assessment. They've, given me their opinions of why and what they think, the problems are. And again, I try to tell them too, I try to look at both sides. Absolutely, I don't want to pay any more. I pay just like you. I live in Waterford. I pay an assessment too. So I don't want to, I don't want to pay you, but sometimes the cost of doing business, you have to. Because we know how it is when you go to the gas station, what gas prices going up and everything else, and it does take, money to put in the trucks. But I understand that, but my whole thing is I still think that we have a lot of things that we need to work on, wise to get to where we need to function and not just keep increasing. I'm trying to, I'm not saying I'm with it or against it. I'm saying, but we can't just keep doing it. Okay, we just can't keep passing it every year, another increase, because we have to address the problems, and we know where the problems are, and it's not because of staff or other people. We know with CalPERS, we don't have control over this stuff, but we have to address it, and we have to get a handle on this. So anyway, but I think that we all need to live within our means. We all do. We all have a house. We all try to live within our means and do the best that we can. So anyway, here we are to make a decision, yes or no, what we're going to do. But anyway, that's some of my opinions on this.
Vice President Guzman.
I wanted to clarify in the recommendation section, the board has the option of choosing any percentage increase. It doesn't have to be 0 or 3.
Correct.
So I think having that, and that is referenced later, but not specifically, in here it kind of, you could walk away with you only have 1 of 2 options, and that's not the case. I don't agree with an automatic inflator that we should just expect to pass on to our constituents. I don't think that's equitable. I agree with a lot of what you said. I appreciate the specifics and how we could, and how we had planned on approaching this issue. I'll say that as a member of the Finance Committee, we had talked extensively about 3 very specific ways we could both increase our revenue and eliminate some expenditures. I'm a little disappointed that we're back here after not really having true negotiations, in my opinion. And I look forward to the future when we can put the plug on some of these things and live within our means.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that sentiment.
Director Bernardi.
Well, as the new guy here, I'm kind of learning everything, but I agree with everybody's what they've said, but everything's going up, so we have to do what we can, I guess, to keep things running, so.
Director Woods.
Well, I would not change my position. I still believe that we need to live within our means, and I think that we have some serious spending issues that we haven't resolved, like you said. And I don't think by putting money back into the budget, we're not resolving anything. We just keep spending. We keep buying cars we don't need. We keep spending money. We haven't addressed the overtime. When are we going to address the overtime? I've been harping on that for how many years now? Every year I ask about overtime, and nothing's being done.
Whoa. Director Woods is addressing his fellow board members, not staff. He's addressing his board members.
So I would recommend that we go back to our budget and we start resolving our issues before we start adding more money to the budget, which I'm not opposed to it, but I'm also not opposed to spending freely.
And in all fairness, a lot of those things are contractual, so our hands are tied on a lot of things, and we can't control the price of things.
We cannot.
So that.
But we can
that is fair.
control other things.
Correct.
Yes.
Which we don't do. And Steve, you're right. We kick in the can.
And I would say that none of that is a reflection of the current staff that we have, our support here.
Well, and
That wouldn't be fair.
And that's where I'm going to jump in, because
You inherited a problem.
well, when I came on the board, it was, hey, you're gonna sit here 1 hour a month. It's the most fiscally solvent agency in 10 counties. We're rolling along, we have lots of money, we're buying new engines all the time, paying cash for stations. So there was no need to raise the assessments the first couple years. Then we roll into May 11th of 2017, a day I'll never forget.
all of a sudden, we go from, we have a lot of money, to, we're in serious financial jeopardy. And we have serious trouble. And, you know, that is not this board's fault. And so we didn't get us to that place. But we sat there at that May 11th meeting and said, you know, oh my God. You know, I know that every single staff person in this room, and even those that aren't here, I know that you worry. Probably you go home, you're so conscientious, but you worry when you see that too. How are we gonna continue? How are we, you know, you have your personal worries about your job, your families, but I know every single person up here worries at night. And so I sit there and say, we asked, you know, so that wasn't the board's fault that got us to that May 11th, 2017 meeting. But I will say, we also had 2 fire chiefs. Not the one who's sitting in this room, but we had 2 fire chiefs who came to the board and said, I've got the answer. I've got the answer. I've got the answer. You need to increase revenues, but you need to, biggest cost of your budget is your labor groups. And please don't be offended, but I'm just talking about what we were told. They said, you know, if we've got to increase revenues, but 2 different fire chiefs told the board, not Chief Wapnowski, said, you've got to increase revenues, but you've got to get a handle on some of these labor costs. There are specific benefits that are too high and are out of whack with what should have happened historically when salaries increased. Some of the benefits were supposed to be dialed down back. But there were also some policy changes that everyone in this room knows could be made to bridge that gap. And so and both those chiefs said, I know how to do it. This board said, go make it happen. It didn't happen through negotiations. And I'm not blaming the labor groups because from what I understand, perhaps those things that we were told needed to be changed, they weren't approached about. So I don't blame our labor groups, but here sitting at the board, here we are now, and we're still with a preliminary budget shortfall of somewhere around 600,000, wasn't it?
527.
I round up. Because I know that we always have to anticipate the unexpected. So we're sitting here at 600,000, and we know PERS, you know, we know what's happening with PERS. We're not the only ones. And so to sit here, and I just, you know, we acted in June, and we took a consensus, but yet I still feel like we're a team, we've got to figure this out together, but I still feel that there's a disconnect. I'm just speaking from myself, and I think that's what other board members are saying is, we're sitting up here making the best decisions we can with the information we have. And we're presented up until May of 2017, things are great. All of a sudden, things are terrible, and we can't even go on. And if we keep going at this rate, 10 years from now, there will be no consolidated. And, you know, you're looking at serious cuts, and so I still, sitting here though, I don't see the solution. When we can't, I don't know how we get there. I'm asking for input. Because even if the assessment passes tonight, and I think it's it shows how much this board wants to and cares about this district, that it's back tonight at a special meeting. Even though I know staff's done a million machinations of calendars to see if it can even happen, and I appreciate that, and I'm sorry about that. But even if we do that, you're maybe to a shortfall, I'm around, you're at 300 instead of 600. Because in the preliminary budget, we took a lot of line items to zero, not because we want to keep them at zero, but because we didn't have enough information. So we said, we're gonna take these things to zero because we've got to revisit them at the final budget, knowing that we had to put funding back in those items, like small equipment, you know, I could name all of them, you know, a lot of them, but we knew we had to do that. So I thought coming back, part of tonight I envisioned was, well, if you do the assessment at
3%, this will get us here, and maybe we could, and just like bullet, we could do cut here, 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 and here. So the board would feel more of this sort of partnership team rolling down the road together. And I know we only had two weeks, so I'm, you know, I'm not sure, I'm looking for feedback. What, if we do this, what's gonna happen? We're gonna be sitting here, you know, in August or September, right, final budget, still looking at some serious cuts. And I just had to say that because everyone in this room needs to know sort of what this board's been told, which is put us partly where we're at with some of these things.
Well, I think,
And
again, I think
Am I not right?
I think you hit it straight on. I think, and we can't sugarcoat this anymore. If we don't fix these problems, and there's going to be closing the stations or there's going to be layoffs.
yeah,
That's it. That's just how it's going to be. It won't be because, you know, we just want to sit up here. That's because we want to do it. It's because if we don't have the money, that's what's going to happen. So that's it.
right. And so at some point, someone in the audience, some part of leadership, and I'm not meaning you, just you, Mike, because, you know, you weren't the two chiefs that told us these benefits or these policies needed to change to make this district sustainable. They came to us with the things that needed to be changed. The board said, okay, we trust you. You're the chief we hired. We're not micromanaging you. Go discuss it. Go see. We know our employees want to be sustainable as much as we did. Go discuss it. It's obvious to me they did not. And by the time it came to us, you would have been accusing us of dealing in bad faith, and that was never what happened. And it was never Chief Wapnowski's fault. He was not participatory to that. He inherited that. Thank God he picked up the ball and carried it down the road. But like it or not, this is not going to solve it. As Director Green said, as Director Guzman said, as Director Wood said, and as Director Bernardi is fast learning. You know, so we're a team. Give us some feedback. Yeah, what do we do? I mean, do you just want the board to sit up here and arbitrarily make some decisions on what should close? We don't want everybody. I want everybody to have good morale and to have the things, the equipment that you need. But up until last year, we didn't need to increase the assessment because the board was told we were extremely financially solvent. And so the assessment was increased last year, but it was increased last year, you need to know, with the understanding, based upon the chiefs that were here, that those labor costs or policies, I'm not just saying it needs to be benefits or other things, there are policies, and everybody in this room knows that there are logistic operational things that can be done to lower costs dramatically. So as I sit here, you know, I still don't see it. So I feel, and I too get, you know, I get harangued all the time from people who also always, I mean, on the one hand they compliment, but on the other hand, it's assessment. So I just want to say that because I want to support everything that comes before the board, but I'm still, without that information, I'm not sure that it solves everything.
Well, what does it solve?
Well, I'm asking anyone in the audience to help.
I don't think we have answers.
To help us answer these questions.
Can I?
Yes.
Speak?
Chris, I'm guessing you don't have a procedural problem with me asking for it.
No, I think it's the board's position, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric DeHart. I'm a battalion chief here with the district. I do live, however, in the city limits of Modesto. I was obviously sitting, you know, as this meeting has been coming up and just thinking a lot about our position in general. We have a study that has said, if we don't keep up with the CPI, we will fall behind. And as we see in the graphs, we have not, and we have. And I'm certainly not saying that is the sole. There's not one thing in here where I can say, we change this and all our problems are fixed. Not saying that at all. So to keep me from reiterating that, I'll just get that out. We now have a new station that we're making payments on. That has obviously increased our cost of doing business. We hopefully will have a new fire station in Riverbank within the next 5 years. I don't know what that timeline might be. We know that new development will pay for some of that, but it's gonna cost us, round numbers, $1 million to staff that personnel. That's obviously going to be a raise. I'm sure some of the houses that move in, they'll pay for some of that, but we know it's not gonna cover the million. So we have to start thinking about that. We have to start that plan as well. And again, I'm throwing out 5 years, maybe it's 20, maybe it's next week, I don't really know. We could put off buying our fire engines. We had 2 left. Unfortunately, one was destroyed in a fire. As it was, what we could have sold it for and what insurance paid wasn't even close, so maybe it was a good thing. But now we have a fire engine, and we have to have it, and we have to keep the fleet running. We have been putting off our final O floor, our engine 23. I don't even know now, Chief, if you can remember our replacement schedule off the top of your head. We're a couple years lead behind. It's 140-something thousand miles. Been in the shop, I don't know how many times now. We just rebuilt the pump at about 10 grand. It's just went in again. It has a Jake brake that doesn't work occasionally, so the guys are coming back from the Grange going, hey, we had 2 brakes again. It needs to be replaced. I don't have, based off of our $500,000 shortfall now, it will increase next year. I don't know when that will be replaced, or if that's even possible. Our entire fleet in general, all of our staff vehicles are getting old. They're all starting, with the exception of the prevention vehicle that replaced one, and the fire chief vehicle. Everything else is really creeping in the 80,000-90,000 mile range. Our training officer vehicle, I think, was scheduled to be swapped out this year. Chief Bobnowski, correct? Yep. Obviously, that's not happening. He's at 100 plus. It's been in the shop, I don't know how many times this year. All of that, those factors, just our fleet replacement alone, I don't even know how much we would have to put in year after year to maintain that. But it's got to be a big number, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, I can't even remember. Obviously, employee costs are going up. We all know that. Radios. We have a significant radio problem. It's just not our district, it's countywide. Our radios are failing on a regular basis. We have guys coming out of structure fires, taking the radio, throwing it on the ground because it's broken. It is not working when they're in the fire. They're keying the mic, they're trying to talk, they're trying to relay information, and there's nothing there. Our radios are failing left and right, so and throwing it on the ground is an exaggeration. Please don't think our guys are throwing our stuff around. But they're frustrated with that. I think we've done some preliminary numbers. We're somewhere around 600,000 or 700,000 to replace those because the radios are expensive. We should be putting money away for that. Obviously, we can't either. So, I don't even know if it's legal to talk about the negotiation stuff, but I will say none of that stuff was ever brought to us at the time. And so, total failure on that, okay? Maybe we can start over. I can't speak for the other 3 battalion chiefs that I represent. We haven't even talked about this. So I can't sit here in a desk or in a chair and say, you know what, let's open negotiations, let's do this. We have to have a process, and I don't think I'm smart enough to understand what that process is to start those conversations. I got a bill, my MID bill, I was told that my children's track garbage is going up $8. I think you mentioned something about that. I don't remember even voting on it. And if you read in their literature, it says they will continue to keep pace with the CPI. They're just going up $8 a month. We're asking them to go up $8 a year, 60-something cents. And I know Director Wood's absolute Band-Aid, I get it, we need to fix it. But we have to, my opinion, we have to pass this budget. It is a Band-Aid, but I just rattled off almost $2 million of things we should be working on that The other stuff, it is going to make a dent, but it's going to be a small dent. The assessment will be a small dent. These other things we need to work on, more small dents, pretty soon we have fixed it. But if we say no to this now, it is really, really going to hamstring us again for the following year and the following year and so forth. And again, I don't have the answer. If someone's smart enough to say, do we have a committee? What do we do to start talking about these things and getting this thing rolling? It's not really for me to say at this level, but that's just kind of my observation.
I appreciate your comments, I really do.
I think that's the first step, just what you just said.
Exactly, giving the information, because I think we need to know that, and we need to be looking at really what those, I mean, we're at the point now, and when you talk about, we had to finance a station, I just think before May of last year, we never thought we were gonna have to finance that. And so I think that there needs to be more understanding about the need to communicate with the people up here, because these people up here are on your side. And the more you communicate with us, the better we can make the decisions that we have to on your behalf. Because you know all of those needs. I don't. And I don't want to be following you around to learn what those are. Because you are very good at what you do, and all of our people are good at their respective assigned tasks. But all of what you said to me makes me feel like we're in potentially a worse position. And, and I just don't think, I think the time was in June, the time was last May. We can't just vote tonight without a firm action plan. And, while it's easy to say, I said when I made my remarks that I know our two chiefs didn't present to the labor groups. I don't hold either the battalion chiefs or 3399 responsible. I believe that. But at the same time, they're part of the team. And I believe in the honesty and the ethics of our people. And they know, if they had to sit up here, they know the cuts that they could offer up, or maybe, or they would have to, because you need to either, to me, nothing is off the table now. You need to either offer up something, and we need to be talking about it, or we're not going to be able to buy those. Not only are we not going to be able to buy those, we'd be closing or laying off. So, the time is, yesterday, quite frankly, to be talking about those. And I say cuts, but I really, I think some of them are cuts, some of their adjustments to policies and operating procedures that bring certain other costs, labor costs, lower them.
Just real quick, just what you said, one thing. This board would have never built a station in Waterford if they would have known. We would have never even went that direction. We would have never, to replace equipment, absolutely. We have to provide service. We would have never did that station. Would have never done that. But we were told, lots of money, we can do this. Just kept on going, then all of a sudden, here it was. What did the day, May 11th. May 11th. Hey, got no money.
Day that will live in infamy.
How are we gonna pay for this station? Okay, well, from then, it just went downhill, just kept on going. And yes, you guys are gonna feel the effect. You're not getting, like you said, you're not getting replacement vehicles, you're not getting this, you're not getting that. I wish we had this magic solution and we could just say, man, we're gonna find this money. And again, if we don't do it from your guys' help from labor on the other side to come back, or the rest of the employees to figure out this to help us, that's the direction we're going.
We have to.
That's where we're at.
Yes.
I appreciate your comments, and definitely from your perspective. On the finance committee, I realize you're not on that one. We had these conversations a year ago, and when it was time to vote for that assessment, I sat up here and said, look guys, we have a plan, there's an approach. If we do the assessment, if we increase fees, and if labor starts talking and we can work out, and I would say bringing some numbers in line with what is acceptable
industry
in
standards.
benefits. We can do this. It's not gonna be a one-stop fix
It's not.
everything, but all of us can do this. And it starts with us, because the assessment was the very next thing. And it started with staff getting the fees up to date, communicating with Riverbank and Waterford to let them know this is coming. And so I really feel like we did our part. I've been waiting for the last year for that third prong there to come through. And I realize you are not on that committee. I realize perhaps the communication fell short, but I mean, you talk about a three-legged stool constantly, and I lost a leg in the last year for sure in that analogy.
I'm sure it's frustrating, but again, with our, I don't know how to put it. I mean, none of that information gets filtered down to us, so how can we participate in something that we don't know are supposed to be participating in?
Right.
And that's the unfortunate
Yeah.
thing, is you have representation on the finance committee.
I don't doubt it.
I know it is not you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that purpose. That's one of the reasons that we've kept those committees. We wanted to include the stakeholders. I see stakeholders all throughout every month, and we're all stakeholders. It's not just us.
Right.
And it's really tough to say that these are some hard decisions, and it's unfortunate because this is not, it would be nice to just say, yeah, you've done your part, we've done our part. We're still a little bit short, but we're getting there, and so let's keep getting there. So I have been disappointed in that personally in the last year as far as making decisions that are appropriate.
And again, we know that, yeah, the radios, we know we're gonna have to put that money out. We know that's gonna have to happen. We're gonna have to figure that out, we're gonna have to happen.
Well, you're
But
not gonna be able to figure it out.
But
if you don't-
again, here's the thing that, as board members, we're getting. Because got a gentleman that, I'm surprised he's not here tonight, and usually he's here, says, hey, you guys gave out all these raises.
Yeah.
Gave out all these raises, everybody got their money. What are they doing to help back now?
And I will tell you, that is
That's-
one of
that's
my
the things that we're
proudest
getting.
moments, is to be able to bring your wages to what they should have been. That was a complete disservice, in my opinion, for the staff
Yeah.
for all of those years that you went without one. So I was
Absolutely.
happy to make that decision. This last year has kind of killed us.
Well, in the last 2 years, in the last 2 years, at least since May of 2017, I will say everyone has been cut, everything has been cut, but our labor group, I don't see have sustained any cuts. And I don't mean,
I would say, or concessions.
or concessions, nothing. They've advanced in the face of the adversity, and that's what our constituents, even though they're not here, that's the call, those are the calls we get. And you're standing there, but this is not directed at you.
No, not at all.
It was
Not at
our
all.
two.
I'm looking at them, believe me.
Don't.
No,
It's
but it
not
was our
directed at you
two,
guys.
our two
Okay?
prior fire chiefs said that needed to happen, and they were going to, and then they didn't. But I still believe, as Director Guzman said, last year on the Finance Committee, she presented that there was this discussion, and that there has to be some labor concessions, cuts, whatever, or we're not going to make it through without not only not getting new radios, but keeping stations open and not having layoffs. So I appreciate you coming to the podium, but I'm looking at other people in the audience and say,
again, the last thing we wanna do-
how do we get there in the next
I
couple
don't want to
months?
lay a bunch of people off or close the station so I can buy radios. That's not our goal here. I don't want to have people calling me going, hey, why are we closing the station now? Response time's this far, whatever. I don't want that. But we as a group have to figure this out. Okay? It just can't just happen up here and we keep beating it off the chief and we go back and forth. This has to be a group effort. And that's just where it's at anymore.
Chief and Dennis have to go sit there with the Ouija board in the office
Yeah.
and print money.
I don't know.
Oh, we got rid of that.
You got rid of
It
that?
costs money to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
So
laughing
anyway.
because you have to keep sane, but going to 1, 2, or 3 is not going to solve this. And it was certainly, as Director Guzman pointed out, her affirmative vote on last year to pass the assessment was based upon labor participating in balancing this budget. And maybe not getting there in 1 year, but getting there. getting there, knowing that as I think this district, you know, has a history of, hey, they didn't have money originally to pay, you know, wages, so they gave benefits. But wages went up and up and up, but benefits stayed up there. And, you know, I think everyone knows the concessions that need to be made, or at least some of them. I think you are more able to make those suggestions than us. If we have to make them, I think they're going to hurt much more, because you guys just are better able to know.
Eric, you know that May meeting, you know what happened in that May meeting. But no one has said, gosh, maybe we need to back up and take a look and see where we are here. Maybe we need to help a little bit. No one has said that. It's gimme, 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 gimme. There's no more gimme. There's no more money. Squeal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up there.
Yes, sir.
May I have a moment?
Yes,
Yeah.
appreciate you, Dennis. And it looks like Mr. Ehrenberg is behind you, so.
Do you want to go first? Okay, thank you. Madam President, members of the board, I just wanted to come up here and say a couple of things. Number one, with the history, we know May 11, 2017 was a bombshell. I want to go back 12 months earlier. There was a fire chief here who spent approximately 10 minutes with me on the budget and discussing the budget. Now, I spent lots of time in the meetings with the finance committee discussing everything. But at that time, I presented him a graph of the future of the budget of this, and it went like this. And 2 years later, not to toot my own horn or anything, we crossed the line to zero almost exactly as I predicted. And it just keeps going down and getting worse. As you know, 90% of our budget is labor. So those are all meet and confer items. I'm not going to go into, but there's tons of things that should and need to be done there to cut on the cost side. But in addition, I would strongly urge the board to look at every opportunity to raise revenue. And also, you have to do it together, I believe. You can't just...
Dennis, we have. Everything that has come before us, we have. The only thing we haven't has been the most recent item that came before us. And we
That
didn't
was the
say
cost
no,
recovery.
the cost recovery. We
Right.
didn't say no, not ever. We said we need more information, we have some questions, we have to answer. So I just want to clarify, we've approved. Everything in the last 2 years that has come before us, we've approved. Increasing revenues and fees, so.
Well, and your opportunity is tonight, again, to help on the revenue side. But I still strongly support looking at both sides, raising revenue and cutting costs. Director Woods, please keep harping on overtime.
No,
You've been
should
doing
not
that
do
for years, so that's great. I want to point out one thing, which is we're talking right now about a $500,000 deficit. A couple $100,000 in raising the assessment will help getting us back towards zero. But I'd like to remind the board that we need to be beyond zero so that we can put away money for radios and engines and everything else. So it is worse than you're looking at it if you're just looking to get back to zero.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
let's see,
We
a
gotta
couple
think
of
about
things
that.
that we're doing, we're talking to CalPERS about the UAL, seeing if we can, there's lots of stuff that the chief and I are working on to help reduce expenses where we can. And then, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say is I hope that you take every opportunity to cut costs and raise revenue.
Well, what cost, if labor is 90% of our budget, how do you suggest, if we're just using round numbers, because after hearing what Chief DeHart came up to, I think my assessment of 600 short, you know, because if we have another engine burn up or something happens, it's just better to be cautious and conservative. Where are you gonna cut your 300,000?
Well, we went through 10% of the budget, the non-meet and confer items yesterday, and came up with $20,000, and then found another $23,000 expense in the SR 911. So we were back at zero. So I can't comment on meet and confer. I'm sorry?
You're at 280. Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think the board very much does. But just the one exception, you know, I have to say, and it's not directed at you, but I will say everybody in this room, you know, overtime is no secret. Don't tell Director Woods to harp on it, because I'm telling him don't harp on anything with staff. So make it so that he doesn't have to, or any other board member doesn't have to harp. We want to show up and have everything be polite, cordial, and remember we're all on the same team. And staff needs to propose solutions to those things, not us. You know, not necessarily you, but, you know, staff needs to help figure this out. And even if it's things on meet and confer items, while you may say that negotiations are over, I believe if you start laying off people and closing stations, I believe that there's going to be a willingness to potentially open that up. And I hope that we don't have to get there to where the cuts are so terrible and so they hurt so bad that we do something then that we could do now. Because you just make your 300,000 is 300,000 that I'd rather see go toward radios, equipment, engines, and things like that.
So the one thing you can do tonight is raise the assessment, whether it's 2% or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam President, members of the board, I've sat and tried to just sit and listen to the majority of the discussion. Some of this is based upon just general direction and understanding of what our labor group's concerns and opinions are. If we're flashing back in time, a lot of our labor group still remembers back in the day when guys were bringing toilet paper to work. They were bringing and providing their own supplies to do their job. I constantly get bombarded of 9 years of no raises. And while we had no raises, there were a lot of benefits that were done and offset. So I completely understand that maybe there's a concern that the board has that maybe that hasn't somehow washed itself out over time. Unfortunately, when negotiations are occurring, the labor group only has so much control of that process. It would be crazy of me for right now to sit here and get into every negotiable item because I can't speak on behalf of my union that formally. I would be putting my reputation and my abilities as the president to way outside of the scope of what I can and cannot do. I can tell you we have been meeting and discussing options to try to see what we can do to fix some things, but I can't promise anything tonight to fix the problem. I can tell you we all have a commitment and an issue to make sure no one loses their jobs, no one stops delivery of service to the public. Chief Wapnowski, I think, has provided a very, very detailed plan and a very, very detailed packet, minus a couple small typos that I think is pretty clear. Our future needs this assessment increase and needed it for many years before. I think without speaking for former fire chiefs, when we talked about, especially in the financing of the new fire station and paying cash, I think there was an assumption based upon our history, we were going to continue to raise the assessment because that's how it was written. The expectation was it was to bring and continue the assessment revenue to keep up with the pace of inflation. Cost of living continuously goes up, so to have one flat source of revenue wasn't logical. Whether or not this board continues to do that, I can't sit here and make that decision. That's what you're here for. I can tell you the labor group's committed to fund the future of this agency. That's all I can promise you at this moment. We've worked on multiple policies. We've talked with management. BCs and I have met multiple times on policies that we can do to adjust things. I can't solve this alone, but I can tell you that even if I found some magical bullet that solved everything procedurally, we are still going to be multiple millions of dollars short long-term for our future. And not getting this revenue now, as we've seen in the packet, it's compounded to where I think it's, Chief Wapnowski, I think you had in the thing there, it was a $2.9 million. Had we raised the assessment 3%?
2.9. Oh, at the,
If we had raised it over time?
oh, cumulative.
But it never,
Had that issue been continued in that same pattern as previous assessment raises have gone on, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Everything would be warm and fuzzy. I don't disagree. Things have happened and should have happened that previous fire chiefs unfortunately have put us into this position. But to sit here, and I'm just gonna speak bluntly, feeling like the labor group is being held hostage to make the future decisions of the department, I don't think is appropriate in this setting. I understand negotiations need to occur, and I agree that we all have a part in this process. But it kind of feels as if we're being put in a position where if we don't come up with some magic bullet that solves it today, that's our fault, and we're going to somehow have this issue of the future funding of our agency held over our head. And that's my only issue.
I don't think I've heard it from any board member, but what I did hear was Director Guzman say that she participated on the finance committee after the May 11th, 27 shortfall. And commitments were made by the participants who sat on that committee, that they knew that adjustments needed to be made on the labor side, and that was going to happen, and that it didn't happen. And she supported the assessment last year based upon those commitments. Is that correct?
There was not a commitment
Right,
to a special number.
Right.
The commitment was to changes, yes, absolutely.
Understood, and I was
But
at those
so-
same meetings, but
but none of
there's-
it
And it
happened.
doesn't feel good to be, as you said, held hostage or backed into a corner. You're absolutely right. I feel the same way.
Agreed, and it's not to point fingers at any of the specifics, but I think we look at history and we look at the totality of the decisions that have been made, and unfortunately, as the May 11th meeting kind of brought everything to a light bulb moment that it came off to the board, I think those issues were being brought forth to the board, and maybe they weren't being heard over time for many, many months prior to that. I don't know that for example, in our finance committee meetings, we made multiple mentions of, hey, maybe we shouldn't be paying cash for these things. The labor group had some concerns over those things over time. Again, we can't fix what happened. All we can do is say, how are we gonna move forward? I don't think, and especially given Dennis' recommendation, that not increasing the assessment is going to do our district any service long-term. Is there concerns that we have to address? Absolutely.
And
But I can't
I would
solve
say,
those
when
things.
are we going to address them? When?
I can't promise anything other than I have a meeting that is gonna occur either August 1st or 2nd, and they will be discussed at that meeting.
Okay, well, I guess we need to move forward then, because, you know, I think what you're saying is you're feeling like you're held hostage, and that's certainly,
not the
we're
intent.
expressing our opinion frankly, because we haven't been heard on some of these things in the past, and I think you, just like you want us to be heard, I think you need to understand the truth from our perspective as well. But one thing I want to say on the assessment, if it was true that the assessment could have and would have and should have been increased every year, then it would have been structured to be automatically increased every year. It would not have required this board to act. So I take exception to that. I think we have to be true to the fact that it wasn't, and the public expected some oversight by the district and the board, that we would keep a handle on costs. And you know, the whole discussion with the finance committee, it just illustrates to me why I've been saying we shouldn't be having some of these committees. We should be sitting here with everybody being privy to that discussion on things like finance, so that everybody can hear, you know, because if you're saying, you know, if somebody was sounding the alarm, nobody sounded the alarm here when I came on board and we said, we got a ton of money, we're paying cash for a station, let's go for it. Nobody said that. I'd be happy to listen to the tapes, because nobody said that from a staff perspective. So, once again, I'm not, and I don't think anybody up here is trying to hold our labor groups hostage. We're saying, this is what was said to us. We know it wasn't said to you, so we're not holding you responsible. But we're saying, we're here right now where we are. And whether we realize it's painful, really. But you gotta understand, we're in a painful spot too. And unless we get over sort of this feeling of who's hostage and realize that we're on the same team and we better go forward together, we're gonna continue to go down, 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 as Dennis says, unfortunately. So,
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Any other comments?
Adam French, Vice President of Local 3399. I was also on the negotiation team. The head negotiator is on a strike team. He was going to be here, but he was not. I think what a lot of this comes down to is we've had a lot of trust and, you know, relationship, distrust, dishonesty, that we feel like we're both playing games. And I can tell you, we're not playing games. The negotiators, the employees, they understand that there's an issue. We have a meeting. We, just like you guys have to come here and make these decisions, we can't just come and promise things. I can tell you, I can give you a commitment that when we have our union meeting on the 1st or 2nd, that the tone that is presented at this meeting will be there. And I do not want to be a part of a station closure or layoff. So it's going to be presented that we have to do something, but we can't make those decisions tonight. But we are committed to working and repairing those relationships and continuing to make better communications for the long term. Okay?
Thank you very much.
you.
I think that's, I think appreciate tonight, the point of tonight was so that, at least so you can hear what we've been told and what we've honestly been told. We've never thought, I've never thought, you know, we need to get rid of, just as you said, Mr. French, we need to get beyond this distrust and be just real clear about what we've all been told. But irregardless of what we've been told, as you said, we're here now. And we've got to keep the ship afloat. Any other comments? Oh, Evelyn, yes, Miss Evelyn, yes, of course.
You keep talking about increasing the revenue, which you gotta do, it's fine. But increasing it by raising the assessments on those of us that pay the assessments is one thing. And I know you keep, Director Green and Director talk about how to go back and, you gotta fix the problems. But one of the problems that you're not looking at is all of these properties, all of these, that are exempt, that are not paying, that are in the district, but they're not paying the assessment.
And I think that's a fair point, and I think that.
There used to be an audit, you can have a whole lot more money coming in. Oakdale and Oakdale Rural don't pay what they should be paying, if they're gonna get the special benefits, they should be paying the assessment.
Well, we have contracts with those agencies, and this board is very mindful, yes, we do. This
I know.
board is very mindful that, you know, while we value our partnerships, you know, we are mindful to try and keep things fair for all constituents, for our assessment, but also our contract agencies. They're a very valuable part of our overall organization, and we are mindful of that. But keep in mind that we can't just adopt additional assessments on those partner agencies. But we are, as we've said in past meetings, we're gonna start, both of those contracts are up for renewal. And while we value, you know, those partnerships, we're gonna be talking about some of these issues.
Oakdale Rural called the doctor at Glasgow on the District 1 thing. They pay way lower than what we pay on the assessment, and they say they did not intend to raise it. Now, if you could provide them the same special benefit fire service, have raised, but you have to keep raising ours.
And I actually sat through one of their board meetings, maybe May, and I heard them, I heard their board, I heard their staff talking about things that they want to talk with our board about, maybe amendments to the contract that can help them increase revenues. But they also commissioned a study about ways that they can improve their solvency as well. And Oakdale City, they've already gone through their own budget constraints, but then they're constantly looking. They're not, you need to know that both our contract agencies, they're not sitting over there not mindful of their obligations to contribute toward this team.
I would be happy to show any of you that, look.
And I
They gave me all the properties inside this district that are exempt from paying those assessments.
and I
You need an audit, you need to make them start paying.
I would say that you bring up a very good point, and although I expect our staff has already looked at those, I would ask them, whatever vote is made, you know, our staff is, you know, even when we don't ask them, they're looking for revenue. So I'm guessing they've already looked at that, But I would say no matter what vote is made, I would ask them again to go through the list and to see if there's anyone that's claiming an exemption that is probably not. And if those need to go through council, they will do that.
And we currently, this was one of the items that I brought forward, was that this has never been an audit, it's never been done since the inception of the fire assessment. We brought that forward because we wanted to address exactly what she is
Thank you.
bringing forward. As of right now, we're probably,
About 60 grand ahead.
well, I didn't want to give a number, but percentage wise in the district, we're probably 60% maybe finished with the district. We knew it was going to take some time, and hopefully we will have it done by the end of this calendar year.
But hopefully those are things that communication
Yeah.
is really, I'm glad you
It
asked the
has
question
been in history
so that
books.
you guys could, yeah.
And, and it's real important that, and this was one of the recommendations that was given forward
Right.
also to the finance committee, that we don't do this again, and that we don't wait for 10 years to go by, 12, 13 years to go by, that it is done every 5 years in concert with the impact and development stuff.
Exactly,
So,
that's a normal,
yeah,
that's the
normal.
normally accepted
Yeah.
review time, so I appreciate that. So that should answer that question, and that should,
But your story is the rates now.
We
tonight.
haven't voted on anything yet.
If you do, we're
Correct.
subsidizing them once again,
but,
year after year
right,
after year.
but if the assessment passes, but we also complete the audit and we find out that there's more people that can pay, maybe that will mean it doesn't have to happen the next 5 years in a row. You know, this is painful for all of us sitting up here. Please understand that. Oh, I pay the assessment just like you do.
And it's a very, I would say that it's a very complex.
Exactly.
Complex, formulas and everything that go on.
Yes.
The connection between our fire district here, the fire assessment, and those property owners, as well as what goes on at the county level, with buildings, new building permits and demo permits. There was a disconnect. I don't know how long that's been going on, but we're rectifying that as we move forward with this audit.
Thank you,
as well.
thank you for communicating that. Well, I'm gonna bring it back to the board for final deliberation and possible action. It's your pleasure.
I would like to say thank you for speaking tonight.
Everyone that spoke.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. Because we need to have more of this kind of dialogue. Well, it's 8:45, somebody make a motion. You have two versions in front of you. Essentially, one of them,
Page 11 is 3%, page 13 is 0.
yep, the resolution on page 11 is to approve a 3% increase, and the one on page 13 is to go with the no increase as was affirmed, well, it was the no action as was done in June, but it affirms that.
All right, I'll make a motion to go on page 13 for no increase. I haven't changed my position.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Green?
Aye.
Director Guzman?
No.
Director Bernardi?
No.
Director Woods?
Yes.
And I am a no.
I would move to approve the 3% as found on page 11.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will second.
Before I call for the vote on that, I would say that I will reluctantly be supporting this assessment increase. But it is based upon completing the audit, looking at the lifeline ceiling to make sure that that is appropriately set and increased if needed. And if that needs to come, if this passes, I'd like to see that come back in at the August meeting. And if that needs to, I'd like to see that coordinated with Evelyn, since that is an issue that's she's passionate about, and rightfully so, to make sure that that is increasing. I think she brings up a good point, that as the assessment increases, the lifeline amount should increase as well. I think that's a fair point. So I'd like to see both of those things done. I also hope that our labor groups, I know you mean what you say, and I hope that we will hear from you before the September final budget. And I hope we won't hear any more about we have to approve any more increased fees before we start bridging this gap.
And if we're going to editorialize, I will say that my reluctant motion is largely in regards to the fresh voices tonight.
Great.
And I am hopeful for the future and hope to not be back here with the same situation next year.
Director Green. You need to hear what is being conveyed in the angst of these votes, people.
Again, I'm thankful that you guys spoke, and I hear you. And I guess what I'll vote yes. But there's again.
Here we are again.
Yeah, here we are again.
Here we are again. And we're doing this again. But no hostage meant here, but I'm just telling you. Anyway, okay.
Yes. Director Bernardi.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yes, yes.
My vote is a yes only because of the public safety and our personnel safety. We do have to go with what Director Green said. We have to do our concession somewhere, but it's not going to replace the life of any of our citizens if we cut services, and it sure as hell won't replace the life of any of our personnel. So
Well, but your vote.
I am a yes.
Well, if this proves this though,
Yes.
you may not be able to do it because you've still got a significant gap that needs to be closed
Yes.
to make sure
I
that
understand.
that occurs.
I
So
understand.
don't think this solves
No,
that.
I understand that, but this is my yes.
Dr. Woods.
I think everyone knows from last May, and no one has stepped up. My vote is still no. I don't think things are gonna change. I'm just disappointed that we have gotten to this point with no concessions.
But I think we all agree with that, and I think we've heard each other loud and clear. And my vote will be a yes. Even though I may not make it safely back to the room. That being said, I will entertain a motion for adjournment, but I do need to say, I appreciate every single one of you being here and working through this with us, truly. And I hope you will come every single meeting going forward. And everything you have, please discuss it and bring it here for discussion. Motion for adjournment? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.